Imagine waking up on a beautiful Monday morning. You brew your coffee, open your laptop, and suddenly, a cold realization washes over you. The skill you spent 10 years honing, the very thing that pays your mortgage and feeds your children, has just been rendered meaningless overnight. Not because you were lazy, not because you are incompetent, but because an algorithm, a machine, or a new process somewhere across the ocean just figured out how to do it better, faster, and 1,000 times cheaper. That feeling, a blend of existential dread, impotent rage, and fatalistic resignation, is the heartbeat of the modern economy. We often ask ourselves, why can't the world just stay stable? Why must I run endlessly just to stay in the same place? In 2025, the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences finally decided to award the most prestigious prize in economics to three men who have spent their lives decoding this crushing machine. They are Philippe Aghion, Peter Howitt, and Joel Mokyr. They didn't win just for mathematical models. They won because they looked straight into the eyes of the monster gnawing at our security and said, "Do not be afraid. This destruction is the mandatory price of prosperity." But is that explanation enough to soothe the pain of those left behind? Or is it merely a cruel rationalization by the elite? Before we step into their world of ideas, let's clarify a bit of backstage detail that few notice. Did you know that technically there is no such thing as a Nobel Prize in economics? Alfred Nobel, in his 1895 will, only mentioned physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and peace. He was an inventor, a pragmatist, and perhaps he viewed the economics of his time as more akin to fortune-telling than science. The award that Aghion, Howitt, and Mokyr received in 2025 is actually titled the Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel. It was a late arrival, established in 1968, like an adopted child constantly trying to prove it deserves a seat at the table with its biological siblings. Why does this detail matter? Because it accurately reflects the status of economics, a relentless human attempt to find order in the chaos of social behavior. And in 2025, the committee's choice sends an incredibly powerful message. They didn't choose researchers of stock markets or interest rates, they chose scholars of growth and innovation. In a world trembling before artificial intelligence and climate change, this award is a nod of acknowledgement. We are entering the eye of the storm, and we need a map. But this map indicates one thing. To build a paradise, you must burn down the old forest. Are you ready to hold the torch?
Let's talk about these men. They are not bookworms sitting in an ivory tower detached from reality. First, the dynamic duo, Philippe Aghion and Peter Howitt. Picture them as the architects of a building that is constantly collapsing and rebuilding itself. For decades, while mainstream macroeconomics focused solely on capital accumulation, like simply buying more identical machines to get rich, Aghion and Howitt took a different, much thornier path. Inheriting the legacy of Joseph Schumpeter, they built the Schumpeterian growth theory. Their personalities reflect their work, sharp, uncompromising with outdated thinking. They see the world not as a smooth upward curve, but as a blood-soaked staircase. There, every step up is built upon the corpses of dead companies, obsolete skills, and shattered dreams. And then we have Joel Mokyr, an American economic historian of Israeli-Dutch descent. If Aghion and Howitt are the architects drawing the blueprints of the growth machine, Mokyr is the mechanic who pops the hood to show us the actual engine inside. He is a master storyteller of history, a man capable of connecting 18th century watchmaking to today's internet boom. Mokyr brings a cultural and intellectual perspective. He believes our wealth does not come from plundering resources or hoarding gold, but from something much more fragile, the market for ideas. The combination of these three names in 2025 creates a perfect triangle. The mechanism? Creative destruction by Aghion and Howitt. The origin? The culture of growth by Mokia. And the consequence? The perpetual anxiety of modern man. Do you feel the slight comfort knowing that the precariousness of your job is not random, but part of a calculated cosmic law? Or does that make you feel even smaller?
Let's try a thought experiment. Suppose we ban all new inventions starting tomorrow. No new AI, no new phones, no new medical procedures. Everyone keeps their current jobs forever. The typist won't be replaced by the computer. The carriage driver won't fear the automobile. Sounds peaceful, right? That is a world without risk. But Aghion, Howitt, and Mokia would tell you that is also a dead world. Their central thesis, and the reason they were honored, lies in this brutal paradox. Stability is the enemy of prosperity. In the Aghion and Howitt model, growth doesn't come from doing more of the old things, e.g., equipping every farmer with 10 sickles. Growth comes from inventing the combine harvester, turning those 9 sickles into scrap metal and rendering 9 farmers unemployed. This is the emotion of intellectual superiority that the prize evokes. It forces us to swallow a hard truth, that local suffering, job loss, bankruptcy, is the necessary fuel for global advancement, increased life expectancy, lower prices. But wait, if destruction is good, why do we feel so much pain? Why is society deeply divided between the creators and the destroyed? The answer lies in how we treat the losers of this game. And that is exactly where the story gets darker.
Do you remember the legendary Nokia brick phone? In 2007, holding one felt like holding a symbol of durability and dominance. Nokia thought they had won the game. They had the best factories, the best supply chains, and the strongest brand. They did everything right according to the old economics textbooks, optimizing costs and scaling up. But then, in Cupertino, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage and pulled out a touchscreen. Within a few years, the Finnish empire collapsed. Not because they did anything wrong, but because the definition of right had completely changed. This is creative destruction, the core concept that Felipe Aghion and Peter Howitt spent their lives modeling mathematically, and the primary reason they stood on the podium to receive the Nobel Prize in 2025. The painful question they pose to us is, are you the upcoming iPhone, or are you the Nokia trying to polish its physical keyboard?
Before Aghion and Howitt came along, economists often viewed competition like a track race. The faster runner wins. But this duo, through Schumpeterian growth theory, showed that the economy is not a race, it is a gladiator fight. To understand this, imagine the economy as an infinite ladder. Each rung is a new technology. The person standing on the current highest rung enjoys a magnificent privilege, monopoly rents. They are rich, they are powerful, they attract talent. But that massive profit is the very scent of blood that attracts other sharks. To climb to the next rung, the challenger cannot just do as well as the leader, they must create something drastically better to render the leader useless. Here is the shocking key point. Innovation does not supplement the old, it kills the old. Felipe Aghion argued that the sole motivation for companies to invest in R&D is the desire for that temporary monopoly. If perfect competition, where everyone sells at the same cheap price, zero profit, existed as textbooks describe, no one would bother to innovate. Why spend billions researching a cancer cure if tomorrow everyone can copy the formula and sell it at cost? Thus, our society is stuck in a Faustian bargain. We must allow tech giants to reap massive profits, even manipulate the market for a short time, because that is the only carrot that keeps them running. But what happens when that carrot becomes too big, to the point where the winner uses their money to bribe the referee and ban anyone from climbing the ladder behind them? That is when destruction stops and the rot begins. If Aghion and Howitt explain the mechanics of the crushing machine, Joel Mokyr explains the source of its fuel. And this is where the story becomes deeply philosophical and cultural. Mokyr posed a question that has plagued historians for years. Why did the Industrial Revolution explode in Europe in the 18th century and not in China or ancient Rome? China had gunpowder, the compass, and printing very early on. They were no less intelligent than the British or the French. Mokyr's answer, the one that earned him the Nobel, does not lie in coal resources or colonies. It lies in something invisible, the culture of knowledge sharing. He calls it the Republic of Letters. Before the 17th century, blacksmiths, healers, or alchemists often hid their trade secrets. Knowledge was a family heirloom that died with its holder. But in Enlightenment Europe, a strange shift occurred. Scientists, engineers, and philosophers began to show off. They wrote letters to each other, they published journals, they debated publicly. Newton didn't just keep the law of gravity to himself to make money, he published it. James Watt didn't just fix steam engines, he lived in an ecosystem where everyone gossiped about pressure and vacuums. Mokyr argues, economic growth explodes when the cost of access to useful knowledge drops. This touches our sense of intellectual superiority. Human wealth comes not from working harder, muscle, but from our willingness to share what we know, intellect. A secretive society is a poor society. An open-source society is a prosperous one. But look at our world in 2025, with patents becoming thicker, firewalls blocking scientific information, and the secret algorithms of big tech. Are we promoting the Republic of Letters or returning to the era of family secrets?
When you put these three scientists together, a chilling panoramic view emerges. The Aghion and Howitt model needs fuel, which is knowledge from Mokyr's model, to operate. When knowledge spreads fast, as in the internet age, the speed of creative destruction increases exponentially. The life cycle of a skill used to be 30 years. An artisan learns a trade and works until retirement. Today, indirectly calculated from their works, that life cycle might be only 5 years. This triggers a deep personalized fear. You are never allowed to stop. The concept of job stability is dead. Not because your boss is evil, but because the mathematical structure of growth demands constant replacement. If you feel exhausted from learning new software every month, from updating trends every day, then congratulations. You are a direct victim of what is called general prosperity. We are living in a cruel paradox. For society to improve, the life of the individual must become more uncertain. Your safety is an obstacle to the nation's growth. Sounds like a death sentence for peace of mind, doesn't it? But wait, in the darkness of this elimination, Aghion and Howard also secretly planted a glimmer of hope, an emergency exit that politicians often intentionally ignore. What is that exit?
Look at the energy tycoons, the traditional automakers, or the legacy banks. Have you ever asked yourself, why, with mountains of cash and clouds of talent, do they let nobodies like early-stage Tesla or fintech startups outpace them? Are they stupid? Not at all. Are they undercapitalized? Certainly not. Philippe Aghion, Peter Howitt, and Joel Mokyr have collectively unveiled a dirty secret of capitalism, one that stirs righteous anger in all of us. The killer of innovation is often the very entity that was once the most successful innovator. This is where the curtain is lifted. The 2025 Nobel Prize honors not just growth theory, but exposes the filthy political game behind the stagnation of nations. Before Aghion came along, economists argued fiercely. Camp A said, fierce competition is good. The more fighting, the more creativity. Camp B said, wrong. You need monopolies so companies have the money for R&D. Aghion and Howitt walked in, smiled, and said, you're both wrong, and you are both right. They introduced the famous inverted U relationship. Imagine it like a classroom. If the class is too easy, monopoly or low competition, the top student doesn't need to study to get an A. They become lazy, fat, and stagnant. This is the image of state-owned monopolies or crony capitalist conglomerates. If the class is too hard, destructive competition, the student knows that no matter how hard they try, they cannot beat the opponent because the opponent is too strong or the rules are rigged. They give up. Why invest if the profit is guaranteed to be zero? The sweet spot is when the race is neck and neck. Here, two evenly matched opponents are forced to run for their lives, to innovate frantically just to get slightly ahead. What is the lesson here? A healthy market is not a completely free market where big fish eat small fish. A healthy market is where the state must constantly intervene to keep the race neck and neck. But here is the tragedy. Who has the power to influence the state?
Joe Mokyr, with the eye of a historian, added the darkest piece to this puzzle. He pointed out that throughout human history, technological innovation is the exception, not the rule. Why? Because innovation always creates losers, and losers often hold political power. Recall the Luddite movement in 19th century England, when weavers smashed machines. We often mock them as ignorant people fighting progress. But Mokyr views them with deep empathy. They weren't stupid. They were protecting their livelihoods. The problem is, in the 21st century, these Luddites no longer wear ragged clothes and smash looms. They wear suits and ties. They sit in boardrooms. They don't smash machines. They lobby to change laws. Agion calls this the blocking effect. When a company climbs to the peak of glory thanks to creative destruction, its first action is not to continue creating, but to kick the ladder away so no one else can climb up. They acquire potential rivals to kill their projects, kill zones. They erect complex legal barriers. They turn intellectual property from a tool to protect innovation to a weapon for litigation. The truth exposed by the 2025 Nobel is the enemy of dynamic capitalism is successful capitalists.
So, what must we do? Resign ourselves to watching the world be manipulated by giants or accept being discarded? This is where Agion and Howitt offer a policy plot twist, one that completely changes how we view social welfare. In the old thinking, especially in the US, unemployment benefits make people lazy. But Agion proves the opposite. Generous social welfare is a prerequisite for innovation. Imagine you are a circus artist walking on a tightrope. If below you is hard concrete, no benefits, losing your job means starving, you will walk gingerly, slowly. You will never dare to attempt a risky somersault. You will choose safety. If below you is a soft net, high unemployment benefits, free retraining, universal health care, you will dare to perform the wildest jumps. This is the flexicurity model of the Nordics that the authors heap praise upon. Flexibility. Companies have the right to fire you at any time, to optimize, to innovate. Security. The state catches you, pays you while you learn new skills, and helps you return to the market. The message for the general reader is truly shattering. We do not need to choose between capitalist growth and social equity. We need social equity in order to have capitalist growth. Without that safety net, citizens, like modern Luddites, will vote for populist politicians who promise to ban machines, close borders, and protect old jobs. And that would be the death of the economy. But can this beautiful theory apply in the era of artificial intelligence, AI, where the net might be torn apart by the sheer volume of the unemployed?
Look at your current job. What percentage of it is repetitive process, and what percentage is pure creativity? Before 2023, we lulled ourselves to sleep with the mantra, machines will replace manual labor, but white-collar workers like me are safe. But the explosion of generative AI tore that safety blanket apart. Philippe Aghion, Peter Howitt, and Joel Mokyr saw this coming long before ChatGPT was born. The 2025 Nobel Prize honors not just the past,
It is an urgent warning for the present. We are facing the two largest technological shocks in human history occurring simultaneously, the AI revolution and the green transition. And, according to their theories, if we let the market run freely, both of these shocks will lead to disaster.
Aghion and Howitt classify AI as a general-purpose technology, sitting at the same table as the steam engine and electricity. The characteristic of a GPT is that it changes everything, from how we shop to how we fall in love. But Joel Mokyr, with the wisdom of a historian, offers a perspective that is both terrifying and hopeful. In the short term, AI will create a devastating displacement effect. Unlike the loom, which only replaced weavers, AI attacks cognitive skills, the very thing the middle class uses to make a living. Accountants, junior programmers, translators, people once considered high-quality labor suddenly see the value of their labor plummet. But in the long term, Mokyr sees an explosion of the Republic of Letters. Imagine a child in a poor village in Vietnam or Africa. Previously, accessing top-tier medical knowledge required hundreds of thousands of dollars to study abroad. Now, with AI, the cost of access to knowledge approaches zero. Mokyr argues true growth will come when AI turns ordinary people into creative superhumans. However, Aghion warns of an existing risk, the data monopoly trap. If AI remains solely in the hands of 3 or 4 giant tech corporations, as it currently is, they will use it to lock down the market, blocking all innovation from the outside. At that point, AI is not a tool for human liberation, but the ultimate tool for surveillance and exploitation. Do you shudder to think that your future boss might be an algorithm that never sleeps and knows your every mouse click?
Moving to the second burning issue, climate change. Why do we know the Earth is warming but continue to burn coal and oil? Classical economists say because green energy is too expensive. But Aghion says, wrong, because we are addicted to our own history. He calls this path dependence. Imagine scientists and engineers as a colony of ants. For the past 100 years, this colony has walked the path of dirty technology, internal combustion engines, thermal power. This path is paved smooth, fast to travel, and immediately profitable. The path of green technology, solar panels, hydrogen, is full of weeds, bumpy, and risky. According to natural market laws, businesses will always choose the easy path. They will continue to improve the gasoline engine by 1% efficiency rather than inventing a new type of battery, because the risk is lower. This is where Aghion introduces a revolutionary concept, directed technical change. He proves that the state cannot remain neutral. If the state merely imposes a carbon tax, it is not enough. The state must actively switch the tracks. The government must heavily subsidize green R&D to turn that weed-filled path into a superhighway. The message here is the free market is great at short-term optimization, but terrible at saving the long-term future. We need a visible hand to slap the market in the face and force it to look in a different direction.
Finally, the most moving part of this group's work, the one that touches the hearts of millions, is the concept of lost Einsteins. Using massive data sets, they uncovered a heartbreaking truth. The likelihood of becoming an inventor depends not on your IQ, but on whether your parents are rich. If you are born into a top 1% income family, your probability of becoming an inventor is 10 times higher than a child with the same intellect born into a poor family. Why? Because rich kids have a safety net to dare to fail. Poor kids must choose safe jobs to support their families. This stirs righteous anger. Our society is wasting millions of brilliant minds simply because they were born in the wrong place. Aghion concludes, inequality is not just a moral issue, it is an issue of economic efficiency. Every lost Einstein is a cancer cure never found, a clean technology never invented. Their solution? Not taxing the rich to feed the poor, charity, but investing in high-quality public education to give the poor a chance to create, investment. We have traversed the mechanism of destruction, the cultural origins, and modern challenges. Now, standing at the threshold of a new era full of uncertainty, what is the final lesson the 2025 Nobel laureates leave for each individual? How do we survive and thrive when the storm hits?
Finally, after traversing complex mathematical models of growth, historical lessons of steam engines, and terrifying forecasts of AI, we return to the core question, the one that keeps you awake at night. How do I survive in this ruthless world? Felipe Aghion, Peter Howitt, and Joe Mokyr do not offer a sedative. They offer a challenge. The 2025 Nobel Prize in Economics sends a resounding message. Safety is a mirage. Stability is the precursor to death. Only ceaseless movement, painful but necessary, is the sign of life. We often wait for the state or the company to protect us from the storm, but Aghion and Howitt imply, don't wait. Turn yourself into a microeconomy. A Schumpeterian individual understands that their current skill set, even if it is making money, is an asset depreciating every day. Instead of trying to protect it, like the Luddites, actively find ways to make it obsolete before someone else does. Ask yourself, if a technology replaces me tomorrow, what would it look like? And how can I be the user of that technology rather than its victim? This is the awakening. Do not cling to titles. Cling to adaptability.
And if you feel exhausted by this race, seek comfort in Joel Mokyr. He reminds us that humanity's greatest driver is not money, but curiosity. The 18th century mechanics didn't just want to be rich, they wanted to know why things worked. In the AI era, when machines can answer any question, the most valuable human skill is the ability to ask good questions. Curiosity, the openness to share knowledge, the spirit of the Republic of Letters, and humility before the new will be a shield that protects you better than any degree. Look at Europe and the US. Europe has a wonderful safety net, but lacks the fire of creative destruction. It is aging, slow, and lacks new tech giants. The US has the roaring fire of innovation, but lacks the safety net, leaving society fractured and full of lost Einsteins. The 2025 Nobel is a call for balance. We need the heart of Scandinavia, social welfare, installed in the body of America, innovation. For you individually, this means build yourself a financial emergency fund, safety net, so you dare to take risks in your career, innovation. Without savings, you will forever be a slave to fear, never daring to jump into a new field.
Imagine 50 years from now, our grandchildren looking back at 2025. They will see it as the year humanity finally admitted, we cannot keep things still. We must destroy gasoline cars for the sky to turn blue again. We must break old processes for artificial intelligence to liberate humans from boredom. We must accept short-term pain for long-term happiness. Felipe Aghion, Peter Howitt, and Joel Mokyr are not prophets of doom. They are ruthless optimists. They believe in the human capacity for rebirth. As you close this article, do not be afraid. Look at the ashes of what is obsolete in your life and smile. Because like the phoenix, that is the only place where rising can begin. Welcome to the era of creative destruction.